This is Fran Duffy. He's our draft guru, draft expert for ALLCITY, and PHLY are colleagues. I don't know if I want to say friends because they just got to win the Super Bowl, and that sucks for everybody outside of that city. But Fran's a badass at the draft, and if you're signed up to be a diehard, which you should be, you can do it at alldlls.com. You get access to his draft content, which is absolutely incredible. Like, it's the most interactive, badass way to see all scouting reports, rankings for all the players you want. He's updating it at all times. It's greatness. So sign up to be a diehard, or else. That's not a threat, of course. Fran, thank you for joining us, and your fridge will be here later or soon?
Yeah, we're starting looking like 2:00 local time, maybe like 2:30. They gave me the window. They're like, it's that classic. All right, we'll be there between 10 and 3. And I'm like, all right, great, great, perfect, guys. So yeah, we're hanging out, but thankfully I'm able to, we're able to do this without interruption.
They'll be there at 4:30.
How much did it cost? Because my ice maker stopped working the other day, and my refrigerator's not as cold as it used to be, and I feel like I'm about to follow you down this path. What are we talking about here? How many commas?
Only one comma, but yeah, it was a little bit more than what we were anticipating when we walked in the store, as it always is.
Appliance hack: go to the big box stores, or tell them you want the one that have a dent in it. It's not a big dent, maybe a little dent in the side. Nothing's wrong with the refrigerator.
Right.
Nothing's wrong with it. But just tell them you want the one that has a dent, the open box one, somebody might have returned it, or delivering, somebody might have scraped it. You get the same fridge that minus the comma, just for a couple $100.
Well, to the guy who's in the chat that said, clean the filter, Jeff, please DM me on Twitter and tell me how. I sure would appreciate it. That'd be great. Fran, you're getting ready for the NFL Combine, which is one of my favorite events, because I do think that there are certain things that matter for certain position groups if you follow along with trends and thresholds and all of that jazz. And as you're getting ready for that, I saw what you wrote for us, and the number of people invited at certain positions is interesting to me. The two that I noted is there are like more defensive tackles than ever, and there are less offensive linemen than usual by a long shot. Is that a reflection of a strength of a draft, or do you dictate that more off of like the top 100, 120 guys?
You know, it's interesting. It really just depends on how you define strength of a draft. It definitely reflects depth. You know, and I think that when you look at it, typically the way that the National Scouting Combine, the way that invite list is created is, basically they're, you're getting that those recommendations from scouts around the league, and all the teams will have a say. And like, we want this guy invited, we want that guy invited. And if he hits a certain threshold, then that player earns an invite. Now, again, one thing I typically track year to year is how many from each position get invited. And it's just an idea of like, all right, because not all of these guys are going to get drafted. And there's usually, we'll say like 20, 15 players that aren't invited to the combine that end up getting drafted. So there's plenty, and some teams are willing to dive into those waters more than others. The Cowboys have drafted some non-combine guys in recent years. So I think when you look at it overall, it is representative, though, of the depth in a class. And defensive tackle, there's depth at the top in round one, there's depth in the middle rounds, and there's depth in the back end. Well, no matter what you're looking for, you're going to get it. And then on the offensive line, I think there are some talented players that are going to go in the first round, but I think it definitely starts to dry up once you get to like round 3, round 4. Those options look a little less alluring.
Another position group that I'm interested in for the Cowboys, and they're weird because they decided not to try last offseason, and they haven't drafted well, and they have a bunch more impending free agents. But like, one of the spots on their team that technically they have the guys to go keep playing is tight end. Yeah. But I don't know that I love the guys that are ready to go keep playing. Jake Ferguson, after getting hurt last year, kind of, I don't know. He's fine, I think. But behind him, And I saw there was a lot more tight ends invited. How do you view this tight end class? I know it's at least solid at the top, but are there a lot of options in this draft?
Yeah, man, this is probably one of the better tight end groups that I've seen in my time covering the draft. And I think when you look at it, it's another one where there's depth in the first round, where we could see anywhere from 2 to 3 and go in the first round. And then after that, again, you get into day 2 and there are a bunch of guys who are like, yeah, I could see this guy becoming an impact player. You get into day 3, this guy's got some upside, or this guy's a dominant blocker. Maybe he's not going to be, a ideal 3-down player as a receiving threat, but can bring value as a dominant point of attack player in the run game. And so I think when you look at it, there are definitely options, no matter what you're looking for, because the Eagles, I was just talking about this with the PHLI Eagles guys, where it was like, all right, like if you're looking for a 3-down replacement for Dallas Goedert, or for Dallas's sake, if you're looking for someone to upgrade from Jake Ferguson, yeah, you've got that. Or if you want someone to complement Ferguson, to complement your starter, you got those options too. So it would not shock me if we see multiple teams in this draft come away with multiple tight ends in the class.
Fran, when you talk about the draft, is there any particular guy and or group that needs to have a good showing? Like this showing of the combine would really make or break whether this guy is one of the guys that we will be talking about all offseason, or guys like, boy, you really cost yourself a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at the front 7, in particular the defensive line, to me, like that, this can be the separator. This can be when you have large chunks of players grouped together. And again, with this defensive tackle class, with this edge rush group, there's a lot of clumps. And so you're just looking for separating factors. And it might be, hey, who went down to the Senior Bowl? You saw these guys go back to back to back in one-on-ones. Who did best? And then the other example of that is going to be here in Indianapolis, and who tested better, who looked. To me personally, guys, like I get as much from the positional workouts as I do from the athletic testing portion. I park at the same spot every year. I've been doing it for like the last decade in the lower bowl, and I watch those positional workouts like a hawk while everyone's doing the jumps in the 40s and everything. I love watching the positional workouts because you get to see these guys go back to back to back doing the same drill, in their underwear and in tights, and say like, all right, like there's no hiding, right? You can kind of see your athleticism, you can see a guy's movement, you can see his athleticism, his reaction quickness. And so for me, like when you look at the combine, this can be a great way to kind of separate your big chunks of players. And for me, like the front 7 is the biggest area we'll see that here in this draft.
We hear a lot about we hear more so with guys at the top of the draft, right? Those high lottery type picks. When you hear that teams will then begin to put out maybe some sort of negative conversations about those players, hoping that they would fall for them. Like, does that conversation start in Indy? Do you start hearing like the ownerships or GMs or scouts or whatever? Does those type of conversations happen in Indianapolis? Or like where does that whole thing start from? And have you had any stories of your own that you looked around and you'd be like, yeah, I remember this guy loving this dude at Indy. We talked about him at a restaurant, but all of a sudden his team started saying that they weren't really interested in that guy.
Yeah, you're funny because it's all dependent on who you talk to, right? And because even if you talk to somebody in the same building, right, you might talk to a director of college scouting and then talk to a quarterback coach and then talk to an area scout, right, all from the same club, and get different feelings, right? Everybody's going to have their own take on a player, and you might talk. I mean, I know there were one example would be like Drake May last year. I remember talking with some different people from different teams last year about Drake May, and here. And it's like, man, I love Drake May. I love what he's bringing to the table. It went really, really well. And then as the spring went on, you start to hear like, oh, like a lot of people for this team don't really love Drake May. This guy, if he falls to them, they probably won't take him. And then we hear draft week, this team was actually looking to trade up for him, right? And so I think that something that honestly, Jesse, like, I track that personally, right? When I talk to people, and I don't hold it against them, right? But you have to have a good understanding of who's giving you good information, who's not giving you good information, who can you trust explicitly, and then who are you like, oh, I got to take that with a grain of salt here moving forward. But it is silly season once we get to Indy. After that, you have to take. I always try and follow up with 2 or 3 people before I really feel good about putting something out publicly, or I'll couch it with saying like, hey, like one person said this, another person said that, and you can do with the information what you will.
So, Fran, we have one person on the show, Clarence Hill, Pop. He is, I think, driving a secret campaign. Yeah, go ahead, Kati. Let us hear Club Pop, if you don't mind.
Club Pop, where legends drop. Clarence Hill just can't stop. Breaking news, you gotta hop in Club Pop.
And he won't come out and say it, but I think he's driving the train to try to get Tyler Warren picked at number 12 overall. My question to you is, just for fun, assuming you had a need at all positions, Tyler Warren, that's the Penn State tight end, Tet McMillen, Arizona receiver, Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back, are all available. Who would you pick?
I mean, Genty's the highest on my board. He is the best player. So to me, it would be Jeanty. Now, I do think you start to take into account like where you're at in your team build and the long-term viability, things like that. And so for me, then I might lean toward Tetro McMillen. Where I struggle, with Tyler Warren is Brock Bowers was amazing. It was an outstanding tight end prospect. We just saw him fall to the mid part around right around the same spot. I'm pretty sure he went a couple slots after where the Cowboys are picking right now. Tyler Warren's a good player. He's not Brock Bowers, and so when I look at it, I'm like, man, but I think we talked about this last week. That's how I feel about a lot of the guys in this class, and so I think you almost have to, put those feelings aside, those negative connotations aside, and just accept that the guy that you're going to take most likely in the top 12, top 15, top 10 of this draft. Don't try and compare him to his contemporaries at the same position that went in the same slot. But I do think Warren's a nice player. I would probably stack it in that order, though, where I would go Jeanty, T-Mac, and then Tyler Warren.
We all silly like the mayor.